We are live. Welcome to my thoughts on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 7, Episode 13, What We're Fighting For. The episode is rated TV-14, so will this video be? There will be spoilers for everything MCU leading up to and including this episode, but not for anything that came out after this episode first premiered. Another episode I love. I'm really going to miss this show. Yeah. I don't think there's really any preamble. Yeah, let's dive in. So, yeah, I really loved so the start of the episode. You know, the thing with. Oh, right. Yes, one preamble. Yeah, they're 7 for 7. Every single season finale, as well as the season openers, as well as the overall seasons, absolutely amazing. Yeah. So before we even see images, just at the very very start, we hear, the conversation continue on from the end of the episode before it, and I thought they did a good job of basically, at first it sounds like, oh, there's going to be some drama here, but ultimately, once Deke has an idea for how they can, prevent the, they're taking the Chronocom ships with them, then there isn't really a problem. The other things just kind of needed to be said out loud, aired out, grievances and such. And yeah, the point about, this isn't the framework fits, that is like, he still sometimes needs people to remind him, yeah, the of how much this can, hurt if they don't stop. Yeah. The bad guys. Yeah, I think but yeah, I really like that, everyone's, talking about this, and then suddenly Deke chimes in, and he hasn't been paying attention, I don't think, to their entire conversation at all. Like, he's just, he's like, oh, so this machine does this thing, at first we're like, that's our Deke, but no, he actually manages to solve the problem. Yeah, I guess he did pick up on the fact that at least some of them wanted them to stop the Chronocom ships, and so yeah, he points out we can take them with us, which, yeah, really nice little. And the thing about, Cora, she's the key. Of course she is. Of course, there had to be. It was too easy. I mean, it wasn't easy, but it was still too easy. If they didn't have to, so yeah, the one that was left on the ship, I should there have been like an outtake or something where they turn to Daisy and she's like, well, I didn't know that I was supposed to bring her. That wasn't my order. But yeah, that means they don't have to get Cora off the ship before going back to the original timeline. And yeah, I will also say it would have been like, holy crap, really just gonna leave. But yeah, Fitz sometimes doesn't fully go there. He does care, but sometimes things are a little too theoretical with him. As far as like, he figures out solutions to complex problems, and sometimes, things that should mean a lot come across as though they're just variables to him. Let's see, what was the other thing with the... Yeah, that was also like, holy crap, the moment that he said we can go back to the original timeline, I was so relieved. Like, just, yeah. I mean, I was at this point kind of resigned to, I guess they're just going to have to, I think I did say that in at least one of the videos leading, on one of my videos on an episode leading up to this episode, so, but no, that really is, I do think they deserve a happy ending back in their original timeline, not having to spend all this time, in a different time period than they're supposed to be, and having to, fix the new timeline and adjust to it and all this stuff. And yeah, they talk about, okay, so someone's gonna have to stay behind, and D'Souza, of course, like, yeah, he's about to jump on that grenade, and he gives the big speech, and then they subvert our expectations. Very nicely done, you know. Because I mean, yeah, he was from the same time as Cap, as Steve, originally. So, you know, there was that is something that, you know, I'm definitely not saying that those people were perfect or something, but there was this sense of, you know, giving up everything for the cause, you know, during World War II in military and such. Um, anyway, but yeah, that, you know, Deke blows raspberries and says, you know, I'm the only one who can, you know, I can run this machine, and D'Souza is still, you know, yeah, he's still impressed by a light bulb. That's neither true nor nice. But yeah, you know, as Deke already is out of his time, you know, like hypothetically, you know, he already tried. He tried to make things work in the present day of the MCU and ended up being, you know, yeah, uh, what's the term again? The you know, infringing on the intellectual property of whatever, the inventions of all these others, you know, and just doing this tech company thing, you know, it's fine, but you know, yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for him to stay, and it's also, you know, he clearly likes the 1980s, you know, so he is a rock star shield leader, and that was also, you know, so you're the guy in charge now. Yes, you know, which also, yeah, I think he has matured to the point where that makes sense. And I mean, he did run the tech company well. But yeah, you know, he is now ready to say, you know, Daisy, I want you to be happy. Because this is like, yeah, he could be like, oh, well, if D'Souza's right, you know, we gotta, nope, that's exactly. So I'm coming with you guys. And Daisy, if you need a shoulder to cry on, the D's ready, you know? But no, he's giving up being with Daisy, which is also, you know, she doesn't really want to be with him, so that is as it should be. And I do think he has done a lot of good over the course of the show. He does deserve something where he can be happy, and I think it makes more sense for this ending for him. Let's see. I think that brings us to so yeah, and the quantum realm, you know, the thing of, you know, the machine that they made forms a bubble which brings the others with, and yeah, the that is a very clever way to handle that entire thing. Did we see what happened to because I feel like they oh, was she in the room getting beaten up maybe with Sybil and the others? I just realized I don't remember seeing what happened to, because she was in the episode before this one being promoted, but I'm afraid I do not remember her character name in this, but Katie M. O'Brien, yeah, certainly she must have blown up on the ship if I'm just, if it's not that I'm forgetting where we last saw her in this episode. Yeah, she could have been somewhere on the ship, and yeah. But yeah, the let's see, we have yeah, what happened next? Let's see, they arrive. Oh, right. Oh, yeah. As they're traveling, we get the entire back story, which, yeah, you know, we've been waiting the whole season to get. I guess since the very end of last season, since the closing minutes of the finale of season 6. And yeah, I will say, if I forget to mention it later, I understand now why, you know, yeah. Simmons was crying because she had to leave her kid. And, you know, when she was crying, she thought they wouldn't be able to get back to that timeline. She thought she lost her kid forever. And at the time, we thought she's crying because Fitz is dead. You know, really nicely done there. And I think, yeah, so, you know, the whole thing about, you know, yeah, seeing the, and we get some more Enoch. Very nice. And let's see, they did a really good job on, you know, we see, you know, they needed a montage to you know, show, and they, you know, they mention, oh, it was a happy ending, but we don't see, you know, the you know, one particular very significant part of why it was a happy ending until later. And then we see, you know, some of it is from like slightly different angles, and the flash, yeah, the montage flashbacks again. And some of it, there's one of the shots where, like, before Simmons was covering the baby bump with the book, and that is, yeah, of course they're reading Carl Sagan, and that's also what D'Souza is reading there at the end. I think, but yeah, and the, you know, the star. What's, you know, what is the traditional name of that star? Alia Oxenfree. I mean Alia. And yeah, that's what they name the kid. And they did mention you know, there's an earlier episode of the show where the thing is mentioned about how she used to look up at the stars. I think, and there at the end when we see them playing with Alia back in the real world after the, you know, we realize that them in the same room together, that the place that the Koenig, I forget his name, but one of the Koenigs used to run, you know, that was in their heads. When they take the thing off, we see them in grass, and it looks distinctly like that place that we saw in an earlier, I don't remember all the details by now, there's so many episodes of the show, but there was something about they wanted to stay in a place that looked very much like that, and yeah, looks like they got to. I think that does bring us very nicely to the, and also the thing about, you know, oh, she remembers the facts, but she doesn't remember loving you, and he's like, no, she forgot something much more important than that. And, you know, it's only by the end of the episode that we understand he was talking about Aaliyah the kid, not Aaliyah the star. And I think that might just about bring us to, yeah, I quite like the thing with, you know, okay, so I have a plan, but we, you know, we all need to be clear on this, and then it cuts and it's back. Okay, everybody knows what to do. Everybody except the audience, and we, you know, yeah, over the course of it, we understand. Yeah, it was a very well planned plan with a well executed execution. I quite like the thing of like, okay, almost there, almost there. Yeah, you don't have to keep saying it. And yeah, oh right, and them travel, you know, initiating the travel had to be done on both ends, and he's like, you know, 1, 2, 3, go. Why would you count to 3 if you're just gonna go and go? I'm aware. And then yeah, they arrive, and yeah, various things there with the, so they go, some of them go, and they end up, that's such a clever, because they must have planned this when they did the finale for season 6, because yeah, there were indeed 4 people whose faces we didn't see, and yeah, we just kind of like, oh yeah, but like, there's, you know, dangerous, you know, they're dealing with stuff that could be, you know, some of them grab May's dead body, you know, I mean, who knows if there's some kind of alien infection. They have no idea what just happened with her. They just know they're gonna want to try to save her. Some of them grabbed a piece of the time stone. We know that that's, you know, the various stones are dangerous, so it's just, yeah, it's they they did end up sort of pulling, you know, I theorized in my video on an earlier episode that it might end up pulling a Back to the Future Part 2, the chunk of it, where, you know, people are avoiding direct contact with the other version of themselves because of time travel shenanigans. I think that's vague enough that you're not gonna be spoiled. That was, I quite enjoyed, you know, that entire movie, not just that part, but that part was probably my favorite. Yeah, I know not everybody agrees. I think it is the best of the trilogy of Back to the Future movies. Anyway, then we... So yeah, you know, that gets them there and has the, you know, and the thing with telling, you know... I can't believe I'm playing... But Piper and Flint, you know, guard this with your lives, you know. And at first it's Fitz, and then later it's revealed that Aaliyah, she's been there the whole time. And yeah, that is really clever because, you know, the Chronicoms are not, you know, now that the temple has been destroyed, the Chronicoms are not running around near the temple. They started, you know, immediately after that, they started traveling in time, you know, or at least some of them did. Not every single one of them. There were ships still there, but those ships were waiting for the time travelers to work their time travel magic. You know, they're not running around. Why would they be running around near the temple? You know, but it is still. So what I'm saying is, I think it did make sense for Fitzsimmons to set up this, you know, just in case. But I do also buy, because like, if it was discovered, you know, if the, that's the thing, you know, they looked in a lot of places, but never bothered to look there near the temple. You know, it was so unpredictable of a thing, to, you know, and that's why it worked. That was also such a great. I don't think I made a big enough deal about that in the let's see, that was the episode before this one, I think, in my video on that, on the episode where it happened at least. The thing about, you know, they think that they're getting one over on Sybil because they're doing the unexpected, and then it turns out, no, it didn't actually work. She knew that they were coming. And then here we see, no, it worked another time, just not that time, you know. Because obviously they wouldn't need to send very many Chronicoms in order to get to that, you know, with just two people standing there. You know, I'm not saying they're not nothing, but it's not enough to stop very many Chronicoms. Let's see. Yeah, I think that does get us to the let's see. Yeah, what was the other thing? There was so yeah, they get onto the ship. Some of the others, you know, and the thing about, they definitely heard that, you know, that I forget the response, but it was a good response. I'm not going to butcher it here. So much else to talk about anyway, and I don't really have any details to comment on there. Just wanted to highlight it. Then we have, what was the other thing? Yeah, Daisy gets by the, you know, power generators or something along those lines, and that was a really good. They're really, really good at that on the show. These, like, match-ups where, you know, because, yeah, you know, when we first met Nathaniel, whether we're talking on the show or in the season, he wasn't super impressive, but then he got powers, barely an inconvenience, and, yeah, you know, now he is both. And that also, I feel like that means there's no Hydra left in the timeline that was changed, because Nathaniel and his Neo Hydra were the only ones left. He's not supposed to be like Antifa, is he? Because at one point he's like, I was so close to ruling. I mean, getting rid of tyranny. Because, I mean, I know there are powerful people who are somehow more worried about Antifa than the FA, the fascists, but I don't know. I mean, maybe they think that the fascists will end up actually protecting the powerful, even though the fascists keep trying to use populism to appeal. I don't know where they would have gotten that idea. Did somebody give them a history book? But I acknowledge that there are cases where fascists did end up messing things up for the powerful. Anyway, let's see. I gotta say, to me, it reads more accurate as him being like, and I don't know if this was the intent. It's possible he's supposed to be this misunderstood version of Antifa, like how, Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, there's clearly some misunderstanding of Occupy Wall Street going on there. He reads to me like a wannabe dictator, because there are a number of dictators who claimed, in order to get power, that they were going to get rid of those who caused harm, And I like that, Sybil doesn't even say, I knew it. She's just like, yeah, duh. You didn't think any of the Chronocoms bought your BS, did you? Why are you saying that? Nobody's around that you need to convince. We just want Earth. We didn't think that you were some heroic figure. Let's see. But yeah, Phil MD caught, and the thing, and Sybil, it's one of those things of the villain is undone by their arrogance. Sybil is convinced that, that the Chronocoms are superior. In a way, he is like a Chronocom, but he isn't 100% that, so he's also not 100% that Phil. But she thinks, Sybil thinks that he slipped up by saying, the lighthouse. Because Sybil thinks that, I got you monologuing. I'm a sly dog. And no, he just, like they said, now this is the part where I smile. We just need your authorization. And what's the next step? This. And yeah, May is comfortable going by the cavalry again. She's been able to overcome her pain over the girl in Bahrain. Very nice to see. I guess I will say, I don't know. Is that because of like the new empathy powers, maybe? I guess. I don't know. It felt a little fan servicey, which the show has not been too bad on. The MCU by this point had gotten pretty fan servicey. The movies. Anyway, I think. Right. For those who don't watch, overall, I've found something to love about every single MCU movie. I think that does. It was really cool seeing Phil MD and May, together take down one of the Chronocoms. Good teamwork. And let's see. I'm afraid I forget which one. What? Someone went and got Cora and brought her to the. That was also. I thought they were maybe gonna have a thing. Maybe there's a deleted scene explaining this or something, but because they say prepare to get her power, to transfer her powers. And she was in the machine, so she was prepared. And I do appreciate, not very much time has passed, so there wouldn't have been time. That's also, I really appreciate, getting, I almost feel bad about John Garrett because there was a chance he could have further redeemed himself, but, I mean, we already know that he doesn't, but taking him out of the equation in the episode before this one, the end of that, means that they had to find another way to get back on Sybil's ship. to get Korra and the other and yeah, it was really cool with the Zephyr. I also really liked it, just so I don't forget to say, at the end we find out there's now a Zephyr 3 and they're doing space missions now. Cool. But yeah, they let's see. Yeah, also, I thought that maybe it would be revealed, oh no, Korra's powers were taken, but Korra's powers were part of why she was the key. And I do think they made the right choice there. Yeah, then we have the yeah, because because they got the authorization thing, they can now, and the thing about, do we need to remind you what we're fighting for? No, I know. And by the end it said family. I guess I'll just briefly talk a little bit more on that, because that's the kind of thing that could easily become corny. I think for some people it might have. It worked for me. Similar has not worked well in a number of other series finales, but at the end of the day, it is somewhat of a reiteration of, because like they always felt like a family, right from the start. Sure, there were some members of the initial family. Grant Ward ended up betraying the others, but until then he felt like a member of the family. And afterwards he's talked about like, oh, I miss you guys, like, so it's, I forget if they've said before that they're like a family or something, but certainly it's been felt, and yeah, here at the end, essentially the new thing is in this episode about the family theme, other than that, Vin Diesel still isn't part of it, though he is in the MCU by now, but I guess it would go too far to have Groot say the word family, but yeah. Yes. The new thing is that now they're, by the end of this, they are indeed split up. Like, is that, last time the team is ever together, 100% chance that that's gonna keep being said throughout this two-part finale until it finally happens, as Sybil puts it. But yeah, they're still family. Once a year they're gonna meet back up through the implant thing, and they're gonna what's it called again? They're going to follow up on. No, they're gonna talk about what's happened since last year. And that is a good, because yeah, like there are a lot of family. It doesn't have to end just because you're no longer, for example, working together or living together or that sort of thing. I mean, yeah, we find out like Daisy is literally in space, and they're still finding a way to talk to each other. So what's your excuse, young man? Sorry, channeled my grandmother there briefly. Anyway, yeah, and that was also great. Yeah, the title and the states or leads into the theme, and then multiple times they appeal to it, and at the end they explain what it is. And yeah, but yeah, once Korra knows, then we see, she's about to boost the signal, and the let's see, what was the other thing? We see, some had been afraid of Korra, but it's made clear here, as is very true in real life, what can be used as a weapon to destroy can also be used as a tool to build. Yes, she can, fry people with her powers, but she can also, strengthen systems. Later she also heals Daisy. I had to admit, at first I thought that was something she could do to Jiaying, because Jiaying had healing powers, and maybe we were also at the time supposed to think that, but yeah. And she's like, I hope you've got good orders to give the Chronocoms. We're not giving them orders. We're giving them empathy. And it's such a great, because yeah, now they got a bunch of Enochs. I hope you're happy. But yeah, if Melinda May can now feel what someone is feeling from several meters away, yeah, it stands to reason that she could also get others to feel. And yeah, it's such a clever, like, I didn't put it together at all, but it's a really, really clever way to, and it does also ultimately mean, yeah, I mean, I suppose it's not super many, but the Chronocoms that were sent to the lighthouse, they don't end up having to kill any of, and I mean, Chronocoms have always just been about, give me a mission, we'll make this work, you know. I'm sure they're extremely useful for S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, you know. If they didn't make at least one of them a teacher at the academy, I'm just saying, that would make such perfect sense. I do not see in the list of students in my class anyone with the name I.C. Wiener. Are you certain that you have not accidentally given me an incorrect name? Why are you giggling? Why are all of you laughing? But yeah, I'm just saying, they could, you know, that would be funny, and it's also, you know, they could make really, really great teachers. Let's see, I think, but yeah, you know, are you friends or enemies? Friends, as we always have been. Fantastic. Yeah, that brings us to the you know, that, and that is also, yeah, at the end of the day, like, the problem wasn't every Chronocom, the problem was someone like Sybil, you know, this thing of, yeah, because they did at one point say, you know, we will help you, you know, we just, you can't have Earth, you know, you can't have all of Earth, especially if you're going to kill human beings to get it. You know, we will find a way. You know, it wasn't that the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents hated Chronocoms or something. The fight between, like, yeah, I already mentioned, you know, so we have the thing about their, you know, the two Quakers are evenly matched, and yeah, great little moments, you know, him saying, you know, I think I'll win this like I did with your mom. I don't, it's not the worst your mom joke I've ever heard. And yeah, you know, at first they both use the power at the same intensity against each other, and of course nothing happens, you know, and then there's these little bits where one will like punch or kick the other and then use the quake power to you know, I really appreciate that it's not just them constantly using the power that, you know, there are some fight scenes in media where two equally powerful people will just keep using the extremely powerful thing, even though, like, why did you think that was going to have a different effect? Really loved seeing Elena speed around, punch, you know, and grab the guns, throw them away. So that's her power. I gotta admit, I hadn't even thought about it, but yeah, he hadn't actually seen that yet. He just knew there was something, you know. Even, you know, he's been with them the entire season, but each time she's used the power other than here, it's a scene without him. So yeah, very, very nicely done there. But yeah, we have the let's see. Yeah, I quite like, there was one part where, you know, Daisy and kind of myself, maybe other audience members, thought, oh, you know, she's got the upper hand on him. You know, Nathaniel looks like he's down, he can't quite get up. So she goes in for another hit, and then we see, you know, he lifts his head and then attacks, and it's like, oh, he was, you know, baiting her. The master. And let's see. Yeah, and the I could do this all day. You do not have permission to... You, sir, are no Steve Rogers. But yeah, and the thing with, you can't stop me without dying yourself. That's the plan. Really nicely done. And I will say, there were several seconds there where I was like, are they really going to end it? Like, is this the end of Daisy Johnson? But thankfully, no, they did. Because, people have come back from worse, in the MCU. So, yeah. They didn't even have to put any robot parts in her or anything. And I do think it's probably a good thing that they didn't give her the empathy superpower that May had, because Daisy is already so brimming with empathy, it would be just too much for her. Let's see. But yeah, there we see, Cora save Daisy's life, and I guess that does pretty well cover the entire mission itself, the final mission 1. And that brings us to the wrap up. So, yeah. Let's see. We have the... Yeah, we get the, 1 year later, and then, several of them step into a room, and, we keep sitting there thinking, well, we were told that they'll never be in the same room together ever again. So, is someone not going to show? Nope, that's all of them. Huh. And, by the end we realize, oh, they're not actually in the same room. It's, yeah. And yeah, everybody got some really great lines about the various things that they're doing now and how things are going. And I think before I say more about this scene, I will just briefly say, so, I am not one of those people who thinks that it always works when a happy ending includes two people, forming a couple and or having a kid and being devoted to raising that kid. There are people in real life, and thus also fictional characters, who are not made happy by such things, but I do think it works here. I don't think it would have worked as well if it was Daisy. I don't think that she would have been super happy with, like, essentially retired life, kind of thing, because they said, but you don't have a job. You don't have a kid, so of course you don't know how difficult that is, kind of thing. Daisy got family, like she had hoped to find throughout, and had found some, and, other than the team until the finale. Well, I guess in the finale, it technically is also part of the team, but yeah, each time something bad happened with the family, both her mom and dad, yeah. But now she has a sister, and she can be, a sister to Cora. And it is kind of interesting that technically Daisy is the older sister now, even though Cora was born first because of the time travel shenanigans. But yeah, and she can be for Cora who she herself needed, and to some extent she did get help from the Inhumans of Afterlife, but also when younger still, would have been good for her to have someone like that. And yeah, that is something that, there are a lot of people who find a lot of joy in being for their own kid or sibling or such, what they didn't have themselves. Yeah. I think that pretty well covers, let's see. What was the other thing with the... Yeah, right. I do feel like, based on the stuff, like, I think, hypothetically, if the kid they had, if Aaliyah did turn out... Aliyah? Crap, I forget how they pronounce it. Pretend I'm... if you can, please mentally correct my pronunciation. That would be... I mean, I can't bring back what was his name again? Davis as a Chronicom, but I will be appreciative of it. But yeah, if Aaliyah was like, I don't know, jock kid or something, they might be like, this was a mistake. But no, she has their curiosity, and she's learning how to swim. She wants to design an animal. We haven't told her that that's not legal yet. And let's see, I think, yeah, it felt like, and it is also like, if they had had a kid in the pilot, I would have been like, they're a little too young. But this is, well, let's see. Has the show also let them age 7 years? I forget if all of the seasons are a year apart. I read on the IMDb trivia that the finale, that the 1 year later is actually set in 2020 when the episode premiered. So yeah, they have aged enough that it makes sense for them to be ready to have a kid. And yeah, I mean, they've always wanted to talk about, they want to understand things and explain them to others. And yeah, having a kid is a way to, so yeah, I thought that made a lot of sense. I like that Mac is still giving gifts, not just his own, his younger self and his younger brother's younger self, or was it his older brother's younger self? Something like that. He's also giving to Aaliyah now. Yeah, I think that more or less covers. Yeah, I felt like each of them ended up in a position that makes sense. Phil MD is just trying to figure out, what is it he really wants. Who am I, kind of thing. And the very final shot is him flying off in Lola, just like it was in the pilot, which I know, sometimes I'm a mark for things like that. I really felt like it worked. Yeah, it would have felt off if he had just stayed with S.H.I.E.L.D., because it's like, he specifically asked not to be brought back, and what came back wasn't exactly the same. So, because it's that thing of, let's see, is it Ship of Theseus? Maybe it's a thing. His brain, his Chronicom brain, can do things that his human brain couldn't. So he's not the same person, and he's not just going to do the exact same thing as Coulson would. Film D won't. May, at the start of the show, she was, at least she said she was satisfied without field work. And yeah, I feel like by the end of the show, she's gone through so much. She's ready for that. And yeah, she's a professor at the Coulson Academy. And, yeah, Flint is a student. And the thing about, we're late, you're late. I'm dramatic by being late because I'm giving a lecture. And yeah, she has been teaching other agents, from the start of the show, just it used to be in the field. And yeah, she had taken a break from the field for a while because of Bahrain, and yeah, there was, on some level, she did miss being in action, and I think she got enough for a while. And it's like, they're not gonna like demand that she stay, there are others who can teach, but I do think it makes sense for at least a while for her to be a professor. Let's see, I think the yeah, I really appreciated the thing about, Cora, yeah, she went through a lot, but she is improving, and yeah, it's really important that, one of the last notes of the episode, and thus the show, is yes, you can come back, you have to want it, you have to make an effort, and you need people around you who are going to really support you, but it is possible to come back. Because, like, she did kill some people, you know. She burned the guy with knives, I forget his name, from Afterlife, you know. And she recovered from, you know, she clearly no longer wants to commit suicide. You know, now she's in a much happier place, and does perhaps also somewhat, you know, I mean, at the start of the show, in the pilot, at the start of the pilot, not by the end of the pilot, Daisy, at the time Sky, was, you know, this, you know, she didn't really trust the government. And no, I haven't forgotten. I do still appreciate, yes, the show is definitely, I'll talk about it in the spoiler review as well. You know, the show definitely does try to launder the name of federal agencies of the American government. And no, I do still think, I just, after a while, it felt like, am I really going to talk about this every single video I do on the show? You know, but yeah. Yeah, you know, she went from deep distrust of S.H.I.E.L.D. and, you know, now she's going to space, you know, for them, with them. And yeah, let's see. And that was also, you know, she was seeking knowledge at the start. And I think that might just about bring us to, what else is left? I like the thing with, you know, the little monkey is, what was it, kicking my leg or something like that. Yeah, that does sound like a kid that age wanting attention from parents. Yeah, and the thing about, you know, oh, Deke, I miss that little weirdo. We'll see him again. Yeah. I think that might... Yeah, Mac is essentially the new Fury, it looks like. Which, you know, yeah, I mean, by this point in the MCU, I'm not spoiling anything after, but they didn't really, Fury wasn't really the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. You know, he wasn't the director of anybody. He was just a guy in a barn. But what was the other thing I wanted to say? That, yeah, and they have the helicarrier again. And yeah, it is definitely not quite taking place in the same exact timeline. You know, that was, I might have even said that in an earlier video on this show, but, you know, is that how they explain that the timeline, that, you know, because the MCU movies and this show don't quite line up. Like, there's definitely stuff that they would have been, you know, yeah, I mean, they didn't even mention, oh, this is what the Avengers did, because, you know, by the time this aired, the time travel in this season, at least, by then, you know, Endgame had come to theaters, and that's, you know, they also used the quantum realm to time travel. And, you know, there's no mention in that movie or this show of, like, oh, we were sharing knowledge. You know, earlier in the show, it was like, oh, you know, remember when, you know, the Hulk did this, and the, you know, but by now, yeah. I think that was also a really cool shot, the camera pulling out as, you know, he's standing there on the edge of, not Forever, but the helicarrier, unless it's called Forever. There was at least one more. Right, I like the stuff about D'Souza. I got his letter. Very cute that he's writing letters. Yeah, he's a dork. He cried during E.T. He calls us, what is it, Astro officers. And, you know, I got him a typewriter. Talk about your kid at Christmas. Just, yeah. Right, I think I forgot to mention that. I did also like when, you know, I think the word he said was peachy, and he's like, what, does that mean something bad now? No, just don't let Daisy hear you say that. Yeah, I think also they did a good job with Cora. The actress did really good acting. Before, there was a lot of sinister and intense kind of energy to her, and now there's just this wonder. you know, because she had a fire inside her, and that can be good or bad depending on how others treat her, and ultimately also who she ends up trusting. You know, she put her trust in Nate, but now realizes that's bad. And yeah, you know, when they get her to the, you know, after they rescue her and get her to the bridge, I think you call it, on a spaceship, you know, she immediately trusts the others because she realizes, no, you know, Daisy was right. You know, I mean, if Daisy was lying, why would they have rescued her? Nate was the one who just shot her to knock her out and, you know, strapped her into a machine to steal her power, which she she knows that machine. She saw it back in Afterlife. I think that might pretty well get us. Let's see. I think. And yeah, that is also, I think they handled the thing with Korra well. By the, you know, once, see, I'm struggling a little to remember, was the end of season 2 maybe? Or was it season 3? It was around there, you know, when, you know, Mr. Hyde killed Jiaying and then they erased his memory. Yeah, I kind of did feel like, oh, I guess that is it for her family. And that was also, you know, it was good that they didn't spend the entire show building up to, oh, is she ever going to find her family? It's so obnoxious when shows do that. I get it. It's difficult to keep coming up with new things, and sometimes it works to build towards something. I do maintain some of what Prison Break worked towards. You know, they only got to fairly late in that show. I'm glad they didn't try to resolve it super early. But in my experience, most of the time, it just ends up being like, okay, could you just get to it already? You know, and here, yeah, I think it was a clever way to give her some blood relatives again, which that's another thing. I don't think that everybody is always happier with their blood relatives, and I'm not talking about myself. I love my family. They've been incredible to me, but I do think if Daisy is going to be okay with not getting, you know, I mean, she just said, I have a sister to save, her name is Gemma Simmons. If she's going to be able to give that up, and, you know, if that is necessary, yeah, she does need a blood relative. You know, I mean, they can talk about Jiaying. They knew her at different points in her life. They had very different, you know, Korra grew up with her as her mom. Daisy met her way later, and you know, yeah, they can talk about that. They can, you know, they're both, you know, let's see, Korra has not had her inhuman abilities for an extremely long time. Although by the end, a year later, she has. But you know, yeah, during that year, I mean, Daisy was able to be there for her, the way that some of the Afterlife Inhumans were. I think because that's also, you know, there was some trauma there. It was deeply emotional when she got the powers and they didn't know what was going on with her. And yeah, for a little while it did look like Shield were maybe not like thinking of her as a bad guy, but worried about what her powers might do. And if I recall correctly, there was some lying. Like they did do something that they said was to help her use the power, and it turned out that it was actually something that was to keep her from using the power to the full potential, and it had a negative physical impact on her. But again, it's been so long since I watched the earlier seasons. I think that covers Korra and Daisy. Let's see, it covered Mac. I think Fitzsimmons also. Right, so there's a little bit with Elena. I think those are them. Yeah, that was also a great, you know me, I'm a mechanic at heart, so he, yeah, made that's really great. And yeah, I do also think, it's one of those things, it's really good when there can be a sense of finality, and yeah, the team are not going to be, I don't know if they were like thinking, are we going to get spin-offs? Probably. I mean, by this point, I think they knew that it wasn't really going to get more, I'm glad they didn't kill off a bunch of the characters. It can sometimes work, and other times it just feels like, okay, you're just kind of bitter that you don't get to make this piece of media anymore, and you're, I'm sorry, that's the kind of thing ideally you want to try to control and just like, try to focus on giving the audience and the characters a happy and satisfying. Well, it doesn't have to be happy, but satisfying. It's okay for it to not be a happy ending, but just killing off a bunch of characters that we were hoping would get a happy ending instead of giving them something more interesting. And I can't really give examples without spoiling those other pieces of media. Well, let's see. I guess, yes, I will say, I thought they did a wonderful job, and I know I said that in that video as well, but in case you didn't watch those, I'm not going to spoil the detail, but I did love the ending of Legion. You know, um, yeah, that's as much as I'll say, I think. I mean, I did say I'm spoiling MCU and adjacent, didn't I? Certainly I am. Yeah, I thought it was interesting because we don't know if it's for sure going to be a happy ending, but there's, it's very interesting. There's resolution to character arcs, and yeah, there's a chance that it's going to end up well. And it's the kind of thing where in that show, if they just had a happy ending, that would have felt like incongruent with the rest of the show, because like, yes, the show definitely had optimism, but there was also like, the show was not the biggest fan of wrapping everything up 100%. There was always room for interpretation as to what exactly, they wrapped up enough over the course of it. I was never like deeply unsatisfied, but yeah, and this is a different ending from that, but it's interesting in another way, and yeah. Let's see. So yes, Elena. I think that might be. Once I've talked about Elena, I think I'm ready to sign off for this one. I'm really gonna miss this show. At least then I will also get to do a spoiler-free review of it. Yeah, I think that they did a really good job with every major character over the course of. Yeah, as far as I recall, every major character. Yeah, ultimately, I can't really argue. It is still a thing that the show definitely very badly wanted to keep certain actors around, and I don't blame them because they were great. But yeah, to have there were a couple of times where it felt forced, and it's one of those things. Like, I also don't love, some other shows will drop certain characters way too early, and like, ideally we aim for the, what's the word, Goldilocks zone. I mean, I wouldn't say that anybody overstayed their welcome. Yeah, so I just, between finishing the episode and hitting record on this, I watched Nerdstalgic's video. I forget the title. I think it's something like "The MCU Has a Nick Fury Problem" or something like that. Or no, wait, that was the old title, right? Because my link was old. He since changed it to "Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. could have changed the MCU forever" or something like that. But yeah, I agree with him on a lot of things. Not so much this show. I think he made perfectly fine points. Didn't make me hate his guts or something. But one thing, he said that the show pretty much rebooted itself every season. I loved that about it. I thought that 100% worked. I'm pretty sure I've said that in earlier videos already. But yeah, I don't think that was at all a problem. He feels that it should always have been, an overarching story, and then like mission of the week. And he mentioned X-Files, which I can never remember if I've watched any X-Files. Is there a joke in there about they erased my memory of it? Or does that only happen in Men in Black and other properties? But I understand where he's coming from, and I do think that worked well for the very early going. It felt to me very natural once they dropped that, because if I recall, they pretty much dropped that as soon as Hydra re-entered. And yeah, at that point, like, they weren't constantly fighting Hydra for the entire rest of the show, but there was always an overarching villain, and they were always working towards stopping the overarching villain of that season throughout the rest of the seasons, and that just, I'm sorry, it would have felt like a step back if they did go back to Mission of the Week, even if there was an overarching story. And I do also just think, like, yeah, once S.H.I.E.L.D. was dissolved in the movies, how are you going to have S.H.I.E.L.D. just going around doing S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff in the show? You would have had to start the show sooner. And I do think I'd like to be able to access the part of the multiverse where they did actually start making Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. several years prior, so that, you know, they wouldn't have to deal with S.H.I.E.L.D. being dissolved. What was it, like halfway through season 1 or something, you know? But yeah, I think it could have been, like, if we had gotten several seasons, like, hypothetically, let's say, you know, somehow magically they knew, oh, that, you know, this S.H.I.E.L.D. thing is going to be huge. Like, obviously, when they were making Iron Man, they did not know that people were gonna, that we were all gonna fall in love with Phil Coulson and want so much more S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, originally they were clearly just supposed to be like the ones who bring the Avengers together, because it doesn't really come naturally to any of the characters in the main Avenger characters in the MCU. They're not really the type to start teams or you know, all this, and join if there isn't a really compelling reason and all this stuff, you know. Anyway, yeah, so the other thing was that yeah, hypothetically, you know, if we'd gotten that, and then, you know, Phil was the head of the team like he is in this version, but he doesn't come back when he dies in the Avengers. Maybe Mac takes over, and then, you know, once it's revealed that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been infiltrated by Hydra this whole time, they do some episodes where they're, you know, they take care of Hydra, they're mopping up after, the same as they did in, I would say it was season 2, where they're like going around finding, oh, there's still some Hydra left in S.H.I.E.L.D., and we gotta stop them from getting access to some of the, you know, there's the guy with the superpower, Clay from 13 Reasons Why, I think it was called. You know, I don't even remember his superpower anymore. But yeah, something like that. And then it would have, they could have had it end in a similar way to this. They split off in different, you know, because, like, that was the big thing, you know. That, I think that could have worked, but the way that, yeah, I think the show made a lot of the right choices along the way. I think, yeah, I'll just briefly say, so, Aliyah, I think they did a smart thing by not giving this girl too complicated lines and or emotions to deal with, and yeah, she was good, you know. And it was also just, you know, it's stuff that a child that age can understand, you know. It's, you know, there's the thing about, you know, you said it was going to be a long time, but it wasn't very long. And what was the other thing? There was at least one other line, but I forget. Yeah, she's happy to see her parents again. You know, these are things that, like, a child can easily, you know, work. You know, yeah. I think that does pretty well cover that. So yeah, Elena. Yeah, the thing with, let's see, Davis never expressed a desire either way, so I feel like there is actually a chance that L.M. Davis is perfectly happy to be back. You know, it's like he never perished. You know, things between the two of them are the exact same as always. It's just that now they have a new frame of reference. You know, he's like, oh, I think you brought me back, you know, I'm not going to repeat the exact word he says, but, you know, less competent, just so you could feel superior to me for once. You know, this, yeah, that was a fun, and yeah, really, really cool that Elena, like, because that's the thing, like, she never really had a chance to before, because for a while she thought she could only use her power to run and then return to where she started. And in this season, she found out, oh, she can just run. You know, she is a regular speedster by this point. And now she can, you know, speed out of a speeding car to speed around them speeding to the speedy place.